Welcome back to the second day of the International Conference on Inclusive Society from the Child's Perspective. It's great to see you here, guests. They are locally here in the whole room. We're saying hello to all the online participants. It's really interesting roller coaster we had yesterday, right? So many really, I think, insightful presentations we've got, and from the keynote speakers as well as the parallel session participants. And today we're moving forward to even greater insights from the across Baltic and Nordic region. So we will start our moderation today and hosting you all with a couple of insights from yesterday's parallel sessions. Because we've been in different rooms and we haven't probably heard everything from both of them. So let me start with the child governance session, which was moderated by Marius Ulozas, and we had a couple of lovely presentations from across the Baltic and Nordic regions. And what we can share is definitely that data nowadays in the governance area is our golden, right? So it helps us to make the decision. It helps us to make the insight. It helps us to make the right pathway towards enabling the greater environment for our kids. And we definitely have to use more technology nowadays to show the dashboards and to save us the administrative time, right? So we can focus more on really helping and facilitating the work with the kids, with the partners across the sectors. It's great that all the partners share the importance of cooperation, and sometimes how we have to admit that, especially in the government sector, we do really have to make a greater effort to sit around the table and really look into how we do more and focus primarily on the kids. This was actually a very nice advice from a couple of speakers. When we focus on the kids, so everybody can cooperate, then everybody diminishes all the lines and responsibilities, but we all focus on the kids. So it's great that on a national level and municipality level, we can have the pilots. We can look into the good case practices, and then what works, we can scale on a national level, on the international level. So these were a couple of things we had as an insights from the, I would say, very technology-driven countries. So I really invite all to look through the sessions. They were recorded after the conference, so you can dig deeper in all the insights we had yesterday. And over to you, Mantas.
Yes, truly, yesterday was a magnificent day, Angelica, and the speakers were amazing, and I really think that we as a community came together during the Energizers, and the audience listening online truly had a fun and knowledgeable time tackling the quiz of the Nordics. So during the conference, it had become self-evident that children and young people are the backbone of our society. And we must ensure that their rights, their voices are heard throughout continents and especially here in Europe. Talking about yesterday's panel, we heard that the panel was moderated by Tuve Schellende, where we heard many key interesting insights. Which one of them was we heard that older children, youth people with behavioral issues don't receive as much empathy and sympathy as do children do. And in this sense, we must do more, because this stigmatizes the young people, and it surely doesn't help anyone in a way. Regarding policy, we must ensure that we listen more to the children and youth, always ask them their opinions before making decisions for them, either in the policy landscape or in our day-to-day lives when we're talking about family. And then also, knowledge is our power, and I believe and we believe that together we will increase our knowledge during today's conference. So now let me introduce you to our keynote speaker of today. Dr. Martin Willi Veba, Program Manager for Child and Adolescent Health for the World Health Organization in Copenhagen. Mr. Martin will share with us his insights of the impact of COVID-19 on child's rights. You will hear also how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the rights and opportunities of children and young people in the Nordics and the Baltic regions. Our keynote speaker will bring the child and the youth perspective of the pandemic of the center of attention, examining both the long and short-term effects during the discussion which will follow afterwards. So, Mr. Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here with you and especially with everybody online as well, because I understand there are about 200 people who are joining online. So this is obviously amplifying the impact of this conference and lead out to the wider audience. So in my talk in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm giving you a quick overview about COVID-19, how it's affecting children particularly. And I want to take it a little bit further towards the end of my talk in the last 5 minutes to tell you a little bit how we are doing child participation in several of our activities in WHO, so to set the stage for a wider child participation discussion which we have in the panel afterwards. COVID-19, I guess everybody knows about it. We are all living through it at the moment still, and I'm wearing this visor, you are wearing face masks because of this, and many people cannot participate here. When we are looking through the epidemics, and I'm showing you this curve of the epidemics here over the last year and a half, we can see when we look by age group that it was originally mainly affecting older people in the first outbreak. And then in the middle, I don't know whether I have an arrow here, no, probably not. In the middle, you can still see last winter, it was a disease largely affecting older people. Now, as we are getting into the next winter on the right-hand side, you can see the effect of particularly vaccination, because these brownish color curves, which are representing the younger people with the orange color 15 to 24, the peak which has just gone over, this is really reflecting, these are the people who were not protected by vaccination, who are still not so protected by vaccination, and therefore you have bigger numbers in the current outbreak in the younger age group. Is this important? Does it affect children and young people? Well, fortunately not so much, because we know that the disease is milder in younger people. So we can state that COVID-19 has affected adolescent well-being in a major way, but not so much because of the infection, but mainly because of the control measures. The map on the right-hand side here shows the situation last year in spring, when countries were basically panicking because of the outbreak. They were closing down everything. And practically all countries of the world, all the ones in red, closed down schools in some way or the other. So it was over 180 countries worldwide. So children and adolescents were affected by disruption of schooling, disruption of social contact. They were exposed to poverty because their families, of course, were affected as well, sometimes affected more by domestic violence. And all this had a major effect on their physical and particularly on their mental health. And we know that children who were living and who are living in vulnerable situations, and those children who have special needs, were affected much more disproportionately. So we can say, and we can still say this nowadays, that it has a major impact on children and their well-being, and the effects will still be visible for years to come, because it's setting back childhood development, and particularly in children who have special needs. We wanted to help member states from WHO, because that's our task, to understand the effects a little bit more. So we are coming up with this sort of matrix, with this heat chart, where we looked at different interventions. You can't read it, but you get the general picture. We put down the interventions on the left-hand side, and we looked at the effect across it. And where it is red, it has a negative effect, and where it's green, it has a positive effect. So you can see that some things, like in the top, the lockdown, had a particularly red effect on many of the factors which we are looking at. But interestingly to see, in the middle, we have some areas where the interventions have got a positive effect as well. So for example, if classes are diminished, the size of a class, the teacher-student ratio is improved, it has an overall beneficial effect on children as well. So there are some interventions where you can say there is win-win, and I'm going to come back to this afterwards. But overall, to put it to the point, we are facing an ethical dilemma here, and we have put this very prominently out. How can you actually justify imposing control measures on children and adolescents when they don't benefit from them personally, they suffer all the unwanted effects, disrupts their education and future professional chances, it all costs money, they will have to pay off the debts for years to come, and then particularly, we don't even talk to them about it, they have no say in any of the aspects. So this is a very prominent question to be posed to governments. How do they justify interventions which are chosen? Of course, they are all justified under the heading, we are disrupting the infection. So this is one justification, but the other side of the balance needs to be taken into consideration as well. As this is a very tricky question, which people individually can normally not answer very well, we asked experts and youth to come together in a technical advisory group on COVID and schooling. It was constituted by our regional director. It met for the first time in September 2020. And as I said, the members represented a wide range of stakeholders. The task of this TAG, and I'm going to refer to some of the outcomes in the next few slides, was to provide strategic and technical advice to the regional office and member states of WHO, so the European countries, on matters relating to schooling in the times of COVID-19, and to identify findings from the emerging evidence to inform the decisions to make the best possible decisions concerning schooling in times of COVID. As I stated before, and I state this a few times again, youth participation is a very important component. And you will have one of our members of the technical advisory group, one of our youth members, join the panel afterwards, so she can give you her perspective on what happened. This is just a quick timeline. So the TAG met a few times, came up with recommendations, and we had several high-level meetings over the last year and a half, where they were reporting directly to ministries of health and education with their recommendations. And at the moment, we are again revisiting and updating the recommendations to be prepared for this winter season. See on the right-hand side what it looks like. You can download this from the WHO website, all the recommendations. And I just put you a quick summary on the side. The first recommendation, of course, is do as little harm as possible, do no harm. And the main consideration is that all policy considerations should aim at having students physically present in the school as far as possible. The TAG recommended this last year already when a lot of hybrid and distance learning was recommended. We know from scientific studies by now that these approaches are definitely only second best. Sometimes they pretend to provide schooling, and especially for children with special needs, they don't provide a good education. Mitigation measures, this was summed up again, have adverse outcomes. It's useful to bring this up, but then there are some measures which is a win-win situation, opportunity to strengthen school infrastructure, staffing, health literacy, and overall health promoting behaviors. These are behaviors which we have been promoting all the years under the context of health promoting schools. It was sometimes neglected, but the COVID outbreak made it prominent again that these measures are useful. This is just a quick visual summary of the updated recommendations as they look like. We got them translated into Russian as the second most common language in the European region as well, to make it widely available. And it is all in 8 major headings or 8 key issues, which I've displayed for you here. So starting with keeping schools open is the key objective. Then we had some considerations about the testing strategy and the effectiveness of applied risk mitigation measures, looking at educational outcomes and the mental health and social well-being of school children. And the key issue 5 is particularly dealing with children in vulnerable situations. Changes in the school environment is a thing I'm coming back to specifically afterwards. And then key issue number 7, children's and adolescents' involvement in decision-making. The key issue 8 came only up a bit later when vaccines became available, and it has evolved most of all of them. We first make a point that teachers should have preferential access to vaccines when it was still only given otherwise to elderly people, because we thought education is an outcome which should be specifically protected. It has evolved now as vaccines become available for children as well, so we basically follow the recommendations of the Strategic Advisory Group for Vaccines in this. It was leading then to these outcome statements of the high-level meetings, which sum up the issues in a similar way as I have mentioned it before. And I just want to highlight 2 things specifically. This win-win situation, this is the key recommendation number 6, here where we were looking at school environment. And I think we have to take this opportunity at the moment where everybody is alerted that schooling and health in school is important to make changes to the education system which are going to be of long-term benefit. This is better school environment, better hygiene, toilets, for example, and hand washing facilities to be made available. Many of the school buildings are relatively old. Student-to-teacher ratios, outdoor environment, air pollution and ventilation, all these sort of investments which have been postponed in many countries for long periods of time is worth to consider now, especially because they help as well against the COVID transmission. And the key issue number 7, this is children's and adolescents' involvement in decision-making. I will show you afterwards how we use it in the European Regional Office, but in many of the countries where the measures were deliberated, you see the deliberations of the ministers, of parliamentarians, but you are missing youth involvement. The perspective of youth, what is indispensable, what is important, what is more important, needs to go into this decision-making. When I showed you this matrix at the beginning, values need to be expressed in this sort of way, and it has to be a meaningful involvement. And I'm pleased to see that we will have this represented in the panel afterwards. Let me spend just a minute on the issue of youth involvement and age of consent. In the context of the European Strategy for Child and Adolescent Health, we were asking member states, are children, adolescents able to make their own decisions, giving consent to medical procedures? And you see here on this map what the answer was from the different countries who responded. Some countries in green say it's based on maturity. That's our preferred option. A mature child, a 14, 15 years old, who understands what he or she is consenting to, should be able to make a decision irrespective of what the parents think. We don't say the parents are not important, they are important, but there are some issues, for example, in sexual reproductive health or in mental health, where the adolescent doesn't want to have the parents involved. And if they are mature enough, they should be able to make this decision. But you can see that many countries are still very fixed in this. The ones in red say children, adolescents under 18 cannot make any decision. And you have this coming up now with COVID again, with vaccination. Should a 17-year-old be able to say, I want to be vaccinated, even if the parents don't consent to it? If this adolescent is mature enough, of course they should be. This is the opinion of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, which we are implementing in this context. So there is something to do, but of course the provider needs to be trained as well to make sure he or she understands. Let me spend the last 5 minutes of my talk to give you a little bit of an insight how we try to get better youth participation in the work we are doing in WHO, because it might help you in the discussion in the panel afterwards. So how are we giving a voice to children and adolescents? We have a European Child and Adolescent Strategy, which went up to 2020. And in the process of moving forward to a new strategy for the next 10 years, we consulted with our collaborating centers, and some of them have a very strong history of youth involvement. How do we best do it? So we wanted to get adolescents involved in the strategy development. For this, we phrased in consultation with several stakeholders, including youth, what are the main problems of adolescent health and well-being in the European region? And you can see this very prominently displayed here. For example, the one which I just mentioned, adolescents cannot access health services by themselves. They face barriers in accessing sexual and reproductive health services, and then health outcomes with overweight, obesity, with use of electronic media, and with mental health problems. So these problem statements we put together, and then we used it as a basis for consultation. We laid out a plan, and that's again a bit of a timeline. We have a collaboration, and I know that Lithuania and other Nordic countries are very prominent in it, which is called the Health Behaviors of School-Aged Children, and they have a very active youth participation group in this. So they advised it on some ways how to do it. And then we put questions out to a wide spectrum of youth. Here you see a list of countries which were involved in this, about 3,500 youth between 11 and 19, and asked them very openly, what are the main issues for them in health, health behaviors, and the future of a health strategy in Europe. You see the main points brought up here. The first one, not surprisingly, it is essential that young people participate in the decisions which affect their health. The second, again, being in school mainly, schools should actively promote health behaviors, but very few of the youth involved reported that their schools were actually doing this. Support for well-being, how to deal with violence, bullying, access to youth-friendly health services with skilled staff were mentioned as priorities. And then a wider societal issue, reducing poverty, providing housing, and taking care of the environment, were wider issues which were going far beyond the issue of health. We used these things brought up to feed it into the strategy, and then we brought the strategy back again to youth to participate, particularly with their perspective in it as one of the main stakeholders. Another process which happened in parallel was initiated by the UN agencies in general. There is a partnership for maternal and child health globally, which brings together all sorts of UN partners. And they are working with the UN, the overarching body, to work on a youth well-being strategy for the world. So there is supposed to be a major General Assembly resolution being passed in 2023 or 24. In the process of this, they came to us as the regional office and asked us to do a consultation in Europe, which we did last summer. So in preparation of this meeting, we brought together from the partner agencies who all have their youth committees to create a youth subcommittee to reach out to their networks and to decide what they would like to have represented in it, in this consultation. In this preparation, again, we decided, because it was still largely online with little offline participation, how can we facilitate this? And I just give you an example. We used the Google Jamboard as an interactive means to get opinions in. And in the preparation, for example, they decided on ground rules, how they wanted to have this run. And then for the content of the consultation, they used this Jamboard to get the content together. They decided on some guiding questions, which were moving them through the issues, and focused out on 6 major themes which were important for youth in the European region. Digitalization very prominently. Use of digital media privately, for health, for everything. Education very prominent. Mental health, no surprise, very high on the list. Physical activity and nutrition, relationship connectedness, and sexual and reproductive health. These were the 6 main themes which were worked through in these 2 days of a virtual consultation and then put together in a summary report. We had 19 young people from 11 countries who participated in this. And in 2 of the groups, the young people took the lead in facilitation, the whole discussion. The report is in its last stages. It will be up on our website over the next week or so, and you can look at it. And we evaluated then in this context the stakeholder involvements, and the report is going up into this overall global conference in 2023. We are looking at the participation as well in a way of using this experience to sum it up. So we are working on a summary paper, which will be available for you as well to guide youth participation for big meetings like this. Let me bring you back in my last slide again to where does this lead us in the European region. So with all these processes, we are now ready with a new strategy for children and adolescent health. And that's just a graphic representation to give you an insight, which looks, of course, more than only youth participation. It looks at infant and young child health, early childhood development, health promotive things, clinical medical parts. Of course, we are the World Health Organization, so we have to deal with clinical medicine as well. And it's being moved through a member states consultation to guide the countries of the region up to 2030. So to sum up my talk, I think COVID-19, and I hope I could show you, has highlighted quite a few of the weaknesses in child and adolescent health in Europe. And very often children's rights were neglected or violated in the control measures. Child participation in the discussion of all measures needs to be strengthened, and we in the European Office make youth participation an important component for strategy development and consultations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, this was a very nice talk, isn't it? So just to remind you, we're gonna have now the session and you always can ask questions. So thank you, Mr. Veba. Really insightful. I really like still a very strong tone from top that we need kids and students and young people in general having a seat at the table, and you showed in action how it works. So it's a great message for our region. And truly, it's now time to invite the more people to join Mr. Weber for the session of discussion.
So, let me introduce you to today's wonderful discussion moderator, Tuve Schellende. Tuve is an international children's rights consultant with a passion for child participation. She has a background as a political scientist in the civil society movement and is now an independent speaker, moderator, and facilitator working for mainly public authorities and public cities as municipalities in Sweden. Tuve, the floor is yours.
So, impacts of COVID-19 on child's rights in discussion.
Yes.
Join us.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And thank you so much, Dr. Weber, for this amazing introduction. I think we have so much to talk about. There's so many different topics, so I think we need to start actually right away. So please, you're very welcome to take your seat, and I will do the same. It's not going to be only us on stage, but we have 3 more participants that are going to join us to talk about the consequences on COVID-19 from 3, I would say, different perspectives. I would like to welcome our online participants. We have with us Frida Rasmussen. Frida is a high school student from Denmark, and she has also been participating in this technical advisory group that Dr. Weber talked about. Very welcome, Frida. Also, I would like to give a great welcome to Tina Steinsdotter. She's a specialist in child participation and child protection from the Icelandic Ombudsperson's Office. Welcome, Tina. And we also have one empty chair here on the stage, and that chair we would like to fill with Guste, who is a representative from the Children's Council in Lithuania. Please give a hand of applause to our panelists. You will be given the opportunity, all of you, to react to Dr. Weber's presentation. So we're going to start with a round for all three of you. And I would like, Guste, to start with you. Welcome to the panel. I said that you are a representative of the Lithuanian Children's Council, and before you get the opportunity to react to what Dr. Weber said, I think you need to explain a little bit, what is the Children's Council?
Yes, so the Children's Council essentially is an advisory structure prompted by, the Lithuanian government. We advise the Lithuanian Committee for Child's Rights, and so we talk about very important, themes for example, like child's rights, such themes as bullying, or even like inclusive education, which talks about, including ethnic minorities and, disabled children into education. So essentially, we are the voice of children in the government of Lithuania today.
Great. And being the voice of children and having the experiences that you have, having listened to Dr. Weber's presentation, what are your reactions?
Yes. Truly, it is incredible to see such advocacy for children among such, impactful institutions as the WHO. It truly shows us that we as a society are moving forward, and that we maybe finally understood that when children speak up and when others listen, we can actually, achieve the best results possible for everybody. So I think it's great, and I really appreciate the things he said.
Thank you very much, Gustav, for that introduction. I'm now turning to Frida. Frida Rasmussen, you took part of this technical advisory group. First of all, can you just tell us shortly about your role in the group?
Well, my role was to advise the people who have not been in my situation about how it has been to be in lockdown and be in school online. And then we were two other girls also. And then, our job was to educate on how we have felt the consequences.
Thank you. And your reactions to what you heard Dr. Weber present?
I think it was very nice to hear how focused and how great the key issues has been. It's been very it's very specific now, and that's really great to hear.
Thank you. We will get back to you in a little bit. And Tina, you are working at the Icelandic Ombudsperson's office, working with child participation and child protection. And I'm a bit curious. We can start also for you with your reactions on the presentation.
Yes, thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. Thank you for this great presentation. I actually didn't know that the WHO was doing so much work with child participation as well, so I'm pleased to see that. I think that this focus on the 12th article of the UNCRC, when we're actually talking about hearing children's view about their own life, is crucial, and especially in something like this where we're forging a new path. Nobody knows what we're doing here, and we're all trying to do our best. And what really often happens is that children become the group that we need to protect, and the group that we need to just put in a bubble wrap, and that we know better than them what they need. And I think that at least here in Iceland, it took a little while before kind of it was realized the importance of actually asking the children do you want to attend school online? And so on and so forth. So I think that this emphasis is just really, really excellent and a really interesting input. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Tina. I think I have one more question for you, so I'll ask you to continue, because I like what you say about the bubble wrap, or that is a risk to put the protection first and forget about the participation. And I'm curious, how has the work at the Ombudsperson's office in Iceland, how has it been affected by COVID-19?
Actively, just at the end of last week, we actually had to postpone our children's conference. We have a semi-annual children's conference that is held every other year. And just today, we were supposed to be having 170 children from all around the country joining us for a 2-day conference with the government. But due to a high increase in COVID, we took the decision last Friday that we had to postpone. We did ask the children that we work with what they thought about bringing it online, and we got a hard no. They said we'd rather skip it than bringing it online because everybody is just so done with online participation. So this is, for example, a really, really huge thing. This is something we've been organizing for 2 years. I think a lot of people can relate to a situation like this during COVID. So our work has been affected greatly. I mean, of course, with the Children's Council, so we have a Children's Councils within the Ombudsperson's office, and then we also manage the Children's Council and SGGs. So I work with both of these councils. Of course, we weren't able to meet in person for almost a year. We just did online participation, and of course, you don't get anything really from that. Kind of you could just feel in the society. I think this is the same everywhere. Everything was just kind of flat, and the works that we were working on and the projects, they kind of all fell flat. Meeting your colleagues, meeting the children, representing children and not being able to meet children. This was definitely a challenge. So I think our work has been affected in very many ways. But a lot of things we've also been managing to do, because we are in the privileged position where we actually have very good internet, so we can work from home. So in terms of kind of writing papers and reports and stuff like that, we've actually been very successful because we haven't had to spend time on meeting people and going to meetings and so on. So I guess it's been, but it's definitely been a challenge.
Yes.
I think especially for my position, because my main work is to work directly with children. So not being able to meet the children and trying to put everything online. I think this was, it was great when the society started opening up again. But now we're actually experiencing potential further lockdowns in the coming weeks. So that's not great.
Thank you. So I'm happy to hear that you were able to consultate the children on how to continue to work on the conference as well, and not doing it online. Dr. Veba, I have one question. Having listened to your eminent presentation with so many different aspects on this, what comes into my mind is that we know so much, but still we see that there are not so many countries actually involving children in their decision making. Is this your view as well, that there's a gap here?
Definitely. There is a large gap there. We can only try to push as much as possible. It is, as it was just said, part of the Conventions of the Rights of the Child, and all the European countries have signed up to the Convention of the Rights of the Child. So they are actually obliged to have youth participation, children's participation in all aspects which affect children. And very often it's violated, it's just brushed aside. And we see this particularly with the infection control measures. It's said that the infection control trumps everything else, and therefore we have to ignore everything else. And of course, that's not true. It is public health, it's development. So you have to balance how much do you need of infection control and how much harm do you do with this. And this is a discussion which needs participation of everybody, including the affected children and adolescents.
Yes. And if we are to just look a little more at that gap, how many countries, or if any, would you say have actually had a child rights perspective when implementing their measurements?
Well, it's a gradual thing, and I don't have the exact figures what you say. Some countries have been better in involving children. Again, the Nordic countries in general have a better approach than many of the other European countries, but it's very gradual and it needs to be looked at in more detail. I think the principle really needs to be defended by groups like this and by the participants here, and go back to your governments, to your school bodies, because very often it's not the high-level government, it's going down to the individual schools who suddenly say this needs to be done, and then you should ask and say, have you actually asked children about this, how it affects them? And you can use the documents which I showed on our website and say, look, here is a recommendation which is coming from WHO. How do you implement this in your setting?
So I think that's an important message to all of us, that the principle of child participation is all up to all of us to defend. Thank you. Now I'm going to turn to Gusta and Frida for a bit, talking about the actual impact on COVID-19 for children and young people. And I'm just curious, Gusta, if you want to tell me how, in your opinion, how has COVID-19 and affected children?
Yeah, unfortunately, I probably have to say that it has affected children in almost exclusively a negative way. You know, seeing huge amounts of people who are unmotivated, who have been diminished, and just simply did not want to do anything online. The very fact that learning became so much more difficult, and really the adaptation period where teachers had to learn, how to maybe even use technology and transmit, the knowledge and the information effectively, also really, deepen that gap. And I think not only we need to talk about not only motivation and educational aspects, but also things about mental health and bullying and these sorts of problems also really arose, especially online. The online sphere, we see many people now talking about how they struggled during quarantine, how their mental health was actually at the bottom where it could have been. So I think, unfortunately, the fact that most countries had a lockdown, and especially Lithuania had an especially strict lockdown from March 2020. It has affected children in almost exclusively a negative way.
Thank you very much for those insights. Frida, being part of the technical advisory group, what issues did you bring forward, or is there anything in particular you want to bring forward when it comes to the consequences on COVID for children?
Well, my key issue is that schools should stay open at all time, and that if grocery stores and cinemas can stay open, then so can schools, and schools should be prioritized higher. I think, or I know that I have really felt the consequences of these lockdowns, and so have my friends and a lot of other people on my school, because we almost missed the whole year of school, and we can all feel how some of us feel kind of left behind because we missed the whole year almost.
Yes, and can you develop that a little more? Like, what kind of consequences do you think it gets for you to missing a full year of school, as you put it?
There have been a lot of topics that we haven't been thoroughly walked through, because it's very easy to, no, it's very hard, sorry, to educate especially young people online, because I think a lot of the focus is elsewhere. And when we have had these lockdowns, we have all been very unmotivated, unmotivated, and it has really had an impact on school life.
So the quality of education has a big impact on that. They also mentioned mental health. Is that also something that has been brought up in the technical advisory group?
Yeah, it has, and we have also talked a lot about how people have felt before the lockdown and after the lockdown mentally. And most of the people that we did a survey, and most of the people said that they have been feeling a lot worse since the lockdowns.
Thank you, Frida. Also, one more question to you, because I understood that there were three of you, three young people participating in the group from different countries. Did you feel that you have similar perspectives, or were their perspectives different depending on what part of the world you came from?
I think we all had similar perspectives, and we all thought that it was a great experience, and that the tag members has been very welcoming and open-minded to us. And we did some presentations, and we all felt very involved
in the group. That's good to hear. I'm very happy to hear that. Gusto, is there anything more you would like to add when it comes to the consequences?
I think we need to talk about, the lack of physical contact, and actually know how it was, even though we had all of these online possibilities and we could connect, with people from all over the world. And I think it really opened our eyes to how much we could do, with technology. I think that ultimately, as funny as it could be, we had less contact with other people. And that seems almost funny because of the possibilities that we could have. But I think the lack of physical contact and physical connection before the lockdown really discouraged people from actually, going out and meeting new people online, because it was just so foreign and unfamiliar to us. So I think, the relationships are also a very big part of the consequences of what happened. Lack of relationships, rather, during COVID-19.
Yeah, it's a huge consequence. Tina, I see that you're nodding. Would you like to comment? Oh, and you need to unmute as well. Now you're unmuted.
Sorry. I just agree with everything that they've said, actually. I think we've actually seen a lot of interesting, because we did nationwide surveys with children about COVID, and we've also been working a lot with our youth advisory groups about kind of their experiences from COVID. And they've actually just reminded me of a few points, the girls, while they were speaking. One thing that that was really interesting to see is in terms of the older children that are going to so we between maybe 14 and 17, 18-year-olds. We actually got a few replies from our surveys saying that they actually preferred the COVID situation, because they preferred being in school online. And these are kind of the children that are more introverts. They're struggling with the social dynamics in school. They're struggling with having to be in a room with so many children and young people at each time. And they really appreciated the opportunity to be able to study online. So there's actually a lot of, not a lot of, but a few comments came through our survey saying, why are we not offering this option for children that don't feel comfortable in the schoolroom, that they can actually just do their studies online? And so this was really shocking to us to get this, because this was more than one and more than two children that commented on this. The main, the kind of struggle that always comes out and is really sits quite strongly with children is that they're like has been mentioned, this whole idea of kind of studying from home and doing the online studies. It takes away the support you get within the school. So a lot of the children are experiencing that they need us to get the kind of teacher's assistance from back home. So they need to get their parents' assistance or an older sibling or something that can help them with their studies. And this has been really struggling for children, for example, that have parents that aren't Icelandic and don't speak Icelandic. So they have been experiencing a lot of disadvantages in this because they can't get the assistance back home that they need. We had one child telling us a story of a classmate that would come to her house and she would be helping her through the window with some of her homework because she couldn't do it and she couldn't get any assistance from home and she couldn't get assistance from school. So these were really so we're really seeing a lot of these as well. I also kind of noted down actually what's also been very interesting is that we've also seen that children have been teaching the teachers, and that's been a fun aspect as well, is that you have, like one of the girls mentioned, that the teachers maybe don't know this whole online world, so they're now being expected to move their whole classes online, to do all of their teaching online. They don't even understand the system maybe, and let alone know how to teach online, because this is a completely different skill to teaching in a classroom. And so you have and kind of these kids that have maybe been doing these online games where they're communicating through the game and stuff. They've really kind of taken over these classes sometimes and just let this whole concept of how do you communicate with each other online. And they've been teaching the teachers, and they've been saying, "Oh no, you just click the button up there in the corner," and the teacher is going like, "Oh." So they're getting this opportunity as well to show their knowledge, and that's been a very interesting aspect as well.
Thank you.
These are kind of the points I wanted to, yeah.
Thank you very much. That is an interesting point that you also pointed out, Gustav. Dr. Weber, having listened to our young representatives in the panel, what are your spontaneous reactions?
I think the statement, keeping schools open, is something which is totally undisputed nowadays. And I think we really have to push this very hard. Very often for politicians, it's easier to close down schools than closing down anything else. And therefore they do the easy thing. And I think we have to make this difficult. And just to state it very bluntly again, meeting other children is a developmental need for children. So it's not only the purely educational content of school, it's the social environment of school which is important, and therefore it needs to be protected as far as possible. We are only just seeing slowly now what the adverse effects are of all the measures. So looking forward into the next winter, where you see already the deliberation, how to deal with the next outbreak, I think we have to be very outspoken, very adamant, and I would recommend going back to these 8 key issues of the technical advisory group again, use this as arguments and say, you really have to protect the school environment. Otherwise, as Frida said, it will be another school year lost. Then you suddenly have 2 school years lost for a generation who basically is at a key stage to move forward. But it's not only just the ones who are before their school leaving exams, of course, it's for younger ones as well. I mean, somebody said it prominently, you can't ask a 13-year-old to postpone his puberty by another 2 years because it's COVID, you know? And the other thing, just to say about vulnerable groups, it's clear that children with special needs have been affected much, much more in this. Inclusion has gone out of the window in many settings under the notion of protecting these children against the infection, but harm is done on the other side. Or, as it was just said again from Iceland, children with a migration background who were on a good progress of learning the language of the country they are living in, suddenly are brought back into their home environment where nobody speaks this language. So they have lost another year of getting into the mainstream of this. And that needs to be really prevented in the next school year, and measures need to be taken to catch up as far as possible to remedy the situation for the past year.
Very clear message to all of us. And we saw vulnerable groups being one of those key issues that you've been working with. Also, I'm curious, now a lot of the effects that we're talking about now, it's hard to predict how what kind of consequences this will have in the long term. But do you have any ideas or thoughts on what it is now that I told you before, what is it that we don't know yet? What is it that we can see for the long-term effect? What can we guess, or are there things that we already know?
A lot can be guessed, and a lot of it is common sense, of course, but we are getting now the studies coming out which quantify it and give you more insight how much it really is. And the picture for many things is as bad as we anticipated it a year ago. On the other hand, of course, on the positive side, we can invest into measures to try to remedy it, but we should not overdo it at the same time. As very often in schooling, if children are missing out on schooling, the remedy is focus on the academic subjects. Let's do more maths because they have been falling behind in maths. Let's do more science because they have been falling behind in science. And to overdo this, of course, will be harmful as well, because you have to give them the opportunity, the children the opportunity to socialize, to go into the soft subjects, sports, music, which are more fun very often. And if you throw out all these subjects and make school a purely academic exercise, of course, you are doing more harm than again.
Thank you. Great points. I have a question for you, Gustav. Moving back a little bit to the child participation part. Now you are a member of the Lithuanian Children's Council, but in general, do you think or feel that the voices of children have been heard in this issue?
I think while we're certainly moving forward, and actually such institutions as the advisory board that I'm part of, and NGOs that deal with youth empowerment and youth advocacy have been heard, and actually are now heard more than ever, since we have especially like more younger people in the parliament and in the governmental institutions. However, I think when it comes to COVID-19, especially, the threat and the fear of the virus, which is very real and was very real, especially in the first parts, and when nobody knew anything and it was also foreign and new, sort of overshadowed the need for child advocacy. And as Dr. Weber said, like the fact that we're protecting these children from the virus somehow overpowered the need for their voice in these issues, especially in the beginning. I think now we're kind of starting to see a little bit more advocacy. However, in Lithuania, I think it's especially crucial to have more of it, especially dealing with COVID-19 and the closing down of schools. So I think ultimately the fact is that when it comes to COVID-19, the voices of children have not been heard effectively.
Thank you. Frida, would you like to comment on that?
Well, I think it's right. It has been very hard to constantly change your everyday life and to constantly fit into a new everyday.
In what way?
Well, that from one day to another, we went from physical school to online school, and then again the other way around. And then as soon as we began physical school again, all the teachers said that we were all behind, and then we had to hurry up to learn what we had not learned. And it all became very stressful to constantly change.
Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. Tina Steinsdotter at the Ombudsperson's office in Iceland. Now we all agree on the fact that child participation is key here. We talk about that this has not happened. Now, having worked so much with child participation, what is your sort of main message to how we can put this into reality, to move it from words to reality?
I think child participation is so easy on topics that don't matter. So very often you want to include the children's voice, so you say, "Oh, let's ask the children what we should eat at the conference," or so on and so forth. It's about it's so often that you can include child participation on the topics that are not important. So children are the specialists in their own lives. They know so much about what they are experiencing. So I think any opportunity that you can get to hear the voices of children is an opportunity you should catch. However you do that, and this can be an online survey, this can be going into the schools. We've gone now 3 times into the schools with a project called the Voices of Children in COVID. So we've just asked the schools to kind of create this atmosphere for us and do a project where we're collecting the voices of children. So we've been able to now 3 times throughout the whole situation, we've been able to kind of catch the voices of children and seen how they're changing throughout the pandemic. So in the beginning, everybody's feeling like, yeah, this must be finishing soon, but it's all horrible. And at the last one, children are getting a bit hopeless, but they're saying we're about to get the injections, we're about to get the vaccine, so it will hopefully be okay, but this really sucks. So it will be interesting to see how they're feeling now that we've gone out of the pandemic and we're going back into it. So I think a really a really important point that has come out is listen to the children, talk to them, and about each step of the way. So we did a survey with them about what information do you want, because as was mentioned in the keynote speech, first they weren't even getting information; they were being kept from the information. So inform them. They need to know. We can't keep COVID away from them. So we need to explain to them what COVID is, why are we doing what we're doing, and have that conversation of how is this affecting you and how can we do it better? Because they might also have solutions that we don't know. Because, for example, when we talk about the internet, that's their world. They know the internet so well. So they might actually have solutions that we just haven't even thought of yet. So just talk to them. Just find any opportunity to talk to them.
Thank you. I think you make a really good point there also, that we have a chance here to do something better, because it is not over. We're still working with this pandemic, so there's still a lot of opportunity to change the way that we are actually taking in the voices of children. Thank you for that. Now you will soon be able to make a few last recommendations, all the panelists, but before we do that, I would like to we have a slide and we have a person from the audience that I would like to just make a very short note on a project from the Nordic Welfare Center. Merete, please.
For giving me the floor, a couple of minutes. I would like to inform you that we at the Nordic Welfare Center, we are an institution under the Nordic Council of Ministers. We have been honored to be commissioned with a 4-year project in the period of 2021 to 2024, where we are commissioned to look into the consequences of children's rights to be heard and involved in school and leisure time activities during the next few years. And this is sort of our obligation. We are to contribute to development of welfare issues and to find solutions that we can cooperate on, and especially on children and youth living conditions. So we are excited to look into this, and we have just started up with having an expert group connected to our work for the next few years. And in this expert group, we have experts from the Nordic region and also youth experts. And we are to look into especially how the right to be heard in school and leisure time activities has been done during the pandemic and after also. And we are especially already starting to see and hear from our experts that a lot of those measures and practices that has been in place to involve and hear children and youth in the Nordic region has been set aside, like Dr. Weber says, and also like you youth here today say. So I would like to invite you to follow us and also to send us information and thoughts you have that you would like to share with us in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as you see, you also have the contact details of Merete if you want more information about the project. We are about to start sum up this panel, and I would like to start with you, Tina Roos from the Icelandic office. If you have just one last important message to all civil servants, policymakers, and others out there sitting with their COVID-19 measurements decisions to be made, what would that be?
I think I just want to say, let's not get discouraged. We've been in this situation for a long time. We need to think in solutions, and to get the most successful and sustainable solutions, we need to involve the children. And maybe this is a last point as well. Let's also not forget to think about the environment in this whole package, because that's also been a very strong point from the children. So let's think in solutions. Let's carry it on. And I know that we might all feel like this is getting a bit hopeless of a fight. We all hate COVID, but I really think that we can get through this and we can make something good out of it all.
Thank you. And Frida Rasmussen, joining us from Denmark, what would be your final and most important message to adults in power?
I think, as I said earlier, that schools should really stay open. It should be the main priority that our education is not affected by COVID-19, and that young people is the future of the whole world, and we should not be affected as much as we have been so far.
Thank you, Frida. And Martin Weber, you have been very clear, and I'm looking forward to hearing more clarity. What is the most important message that you have to us here today?
Well, I think it's simple. Be assertive. Just claim again that the others are doing what is demanded in this way, which is part of the obligations of the Conventions of the Right of the Child, other obligations which governments have made. And particularly with schools, Frida has said it, try to keep the schools open under almost all circumstances. Only the most extreme circumstances would warrant that a school could be closed down. And I think this was done too liberally in the last year, and that must be avoided in the future. And then involve the children in all aspects which affect them.
So keep schools open and listen to the children involved. Live up to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child that we have all countries have signed up to.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. And Gustav, if you sum up your final recommendations and your most important messages.
Yes, I think if, to sum up, I'd like to say, pay attention to the consequences and reactions to your decisions. Pay attention to what happens when they are implemented. And most importantly, probably communicate. Include children not only in, the outermost surveys or whatever, but into the innermost workings and decisions of the country, because it truly can bring the most and best decisions.
Thank you very much for all your messages. We have saved a few minutes for questions from the audience, so I hope we have some questions coming in. I would like to thank you all for your eminent insights and for everything that you have provided us with. I think this panel has given us a very clear message when it comes to what is important, not only what has been important, but also what is important now to continue avoiding that children are harmed because of the restrictions that we on measurements that we put out as adults. So it's a big responsibility that we have to live up with too. Thank you very much to the panel.
I feel like the panel was so clear that we don't have any questions so far coming in. Therefore, we just also want to thank the panelists for your really great insights. Thank you, Gusta. I'm so proud to have such an active Lithuanian here, really representing the thoughts. Thank you once again, Tuve, for sharing with us, and thank you, Dr. Veba, as well for joining us. So we'll let you free, and thank you, and we'll move forward.
Thank you.
So hope all of you really got this, I would say, a very wisdom and very kind energy in a way of really pointing out the very smart solutions what we have to do, because I believe we've spent a couple of years already in the situation where we want to move forward. So really thank you once again for the panel. And now will be the time for us to dive into some energy and a coffee break. But before we join there and have our discussions after the couple of these presentations, what we heard of, what we can do more, right? Let us, Mantas, present the parallel sessions, which we will move after the coffee break. So Mantas, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I do encourage you once more to always use Slido here live and virtually to voice all of your questions, because we want to know your opinions. Now, talking about the parallel session topics for today, where the first one will be held here in the main room, and it will be called See, Listen, and Encourage Participation of Children and Young People with Disabilities. You will find out how can children and young people with disabilities be supported and empowered in exercising their rights. Participation of children and young people with disabilities are addressed by the panelists, highlighting the perspectives of youth, advocacy, participation in decision-making, and key stakeholders in ensuring that participation is accessible to every young child and person in need. Now, and the second will be in the smaller room, which will be hosted there, and the topic would be child rights of migrant children. The discussion will lead us to better understand how do we better include parents and children with refugees and migrant backgrounds in the society, with a focus on the importance of organizing early education for children, youth organizations, and non-formal cultural education. The panelists will provide good examples in integrated service empowerment.
And now it's our time to go and refuel our energy. So the virtual participants, please use the link same you used yesterday for the parallel sessions here virtually. And just to remind you, we have on the downstairs the exhibition of sustainable cities as well as virtually. So please go there and see and visit everything around health, mobility, low carbon, circular economy, and resilience. The Nordics are definitely on the journey, right, to even greater impact on the society, on our environment. And for virtual participants, don't forget as well, you still have a chance to participate in a Nordic quiz. So see you soon in the parallel sessions, which will start at 10:45. Enjoy your coffee break.
See you soon. All back here. And as we mentioned, today's parallel session, which will be hosted here, is See, Listen, and Include Participation of Children and Young People with Disabilities. You will hear many insights, and I'm sure that you'll ask very spontaneous and awesome questions throughout this discussion. So, this insightful panel discussion will be moderated by Aistis Norkus. Aistis describes himself as a passionate person who is not stopped by inborn disability, and is currently working as a head of a shopper marketing in the daytime, and the evenings he is actively writing about music, hosting music based on shows, and managing young artists, while still finding some time to be a model and presenter in a partnership with Hero Talents, the first model and speaker agency in Lithuania that seeks to enable people with disabilities to operate in the advertising and event markets. So, Aistis, the floor is yours. And to all the viewers, have a fruitful and interesting discussion.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for greetings here in physical order and in online. I'm very grateful that you joined for this discussion and for this conference. And our discussion is quite a sensitive topic, but I would like to, first of all, step out from that a little bit further and have some rhetorical questions instead. So, my rhetorical question would be that have you ever stopped for a minute and thought about some children from your neighborhood which you see on a daily basis and just thought about him or she if they feel really integrated into our society? The question is, what would we say if we would ask them? How we would feel and what would be the answer? So on today's topic, see, listen, and include or encourage young people with disabilities and children, we will have very fruitful presentations from very well-established presenters with best practices on these engagement topics. On the topics how participation of young people and children in our society, organizations, working companies, sports can be achieved. So we will have 3 presenters today, and the presenters would be actually Jana Tiri from Project Coordinator at the National Women with Disabilities organization in Finland. She will join us online. Hello, Jana. And on a physical meeting in these 2 chairs, we will have additional 2 very beautiful women. It is Merte Loper, Senior Advisor at Nordic Welfare Center, Stockholm, Sweden. Welcome, Merte. And Ulrika Askengren, Managing Director at Parasport, Sweden Association. Good day, ladies, and how you feel to be here? Would you feel an honor, or what are your feelings entirely on this topic? Maybe we will start with Jana.
Hi everyone, I'm very honored to be here. Really nice to have this moment between all of us about to talk and thought about inclusion of disabled youth and children. The topic is really dear to my heart.
Merete, your feelings?
I share your feelings, Jana. I'm honored to be here, and I look forward to discuss this topic with you and also to share our latest report on this issue.
And Ulrika, I think it's not the first time you're presenting, on these directions.
I've had some really wonderful discussions and talks in the coffee break, and I really hope for more questions because I think there is a very high interest in these questions. So looking forward to this.
So for all of the attendants, just to see and know the flow, we will have 3 presentations for around 10 minutes. And after each presentation, we will have around 5 minutes for questions and overall discussion. So via slido.com, feel free, hashtag is Norden30. Ask the questions, ask the needed questions, what you want, and to just more collaborate with our presenters, with me even, if you would like. You can ask either in English or in Lithuanian, and we will definitely help to answer them. So after each of presentation, we will have around 5 minutes to answering questions, but if you will do all of the information later and some questions will appear later, at the end of the session, we will have additional 5 minutes in order to ask and gather all of the needed information. Jana, I think we should start with you, and could you present your topic of today?
Yes, I will talk about the inclusion of of disabled children and youth. Do I start my whole presentation?
Yes, thanks.
Can I start now?
Yes, you can
Okay,
start.
thank you. Okay. Really glad to be here. My name is Jaana Tiiri. I'm from Finland, and I'm a disability activist. And also, I'm working right now at Veba project, where we support the rights of disabled girls and women in Finland. But I've been a disability activist many years, from all the way from my teenager years, and at the beginning of the presentation, I will talk a little bit about my story and then my thoughts about inclusion. I am a disabled person myself. I was born disabled, so I've always been a disabled person here in Finland, and I was born in a small village, and through my life I've seen inclusion in my life, I think, and I like to keep myself as a good example of when inclusion does things right. I've been very fortunate in my own life. I have education. I am right now I have a job. I have a home. I'm married, as such. So I likely take myself as included to society, and I've thought very much about why things on my behalf went so well, and I think there, in those answers there lies some solutions that we can just discuss today. From young age, I've been included to many important decisions and life-changing things in my life through my mother. When I was really young, my mother thought that it was important to keep me in those discussions that handled my medical care, that handled my social services, my disability services, my aid systems. A lot of those things are really meaningful to disabled people from very young age, but unfortunately, in many of the cases, all those things are handled without asking about the opinion of the disabled child. Of course, it can be hard especially when the disabled kid is really young. But I think that we all have to ask ourselves that can we and should we and do we have the need to include young people in the decision making. After my childhood, I, like many disabled people, unfortunately faced a lot of discrimination through my disability, and that's why I joined the disability movement and many organizations where I have done a lot of work, from community work to ministry level hearings about inclusion of children with disabilities. I have been a chairperson in a young disabled work group in the biggest association in Finland for people with physical disabilities. Through that experience, I formed my views on inclusion inclusion of children and young people with disabilities. I believe that the thought and capability to inclusion is born at very young age. The disabled life, when you are born, when you are born to it, is very controlled. Like, of course, any other life in childhood is controlled, but I believe that disabled life is very controlled because all the opinions that other people and age systems have for you. There's the medical opinion and procedures, of course, that often is made, and those are controlled by the doctors and medical staff, and there's a social and disability service system which is controlled by other people, especially when you are underage. And all these systems that support your life often, unfortunately, are the kind of things that you cannot decide for yourself. And in disabled life, there are really much things that you can't control yourself, and that thought of control, I think, is really really important when we are talking about inclusion. I will always remember a time when I was training young disability activists, and one young disabled activist told me that sometimes it feels like it is easier to make a difference through activism to climate crisis than it is to make a difference in your own life, and for example, to the necessary disability services. And I think that is a really clear point where we need to focus. We need to have, we need to build the confidence in disabled children and youth that they can control and plan their life, and that it isn't controlled and planned from somewhere else. I think it is important to see inclusion in 3 different areas in life. To be able to control your daily life, to be able to control your future, and the ability to impact the world around you. And I think inclusion in all these 3 areas is necessary. What I mean when I talk about inclusion in daily life is that what I said, many things with disabled people are decided for us by doctors, parents, and it's really vital to have say in these things. For example, medical procedures, it's really significant. For example, in my life, my mother and my parents always talked with me, heard me when there was were plans to make another medical procedure. Of course, always we can't do the actions the way disabled youth and children want, but the hearing is important because it makes you feel like your life is yours, and it also makes you take responsibility of thinking and planning your daily life, and also helps the ability to understand and be able to take care of your own services, aid, etc. in later of your life. What I talk about when I talk about inclusion in your future, I think that that means inclusion in school, hobbies, in education, higher education, and work life. Many times, disabled youth are faced with the talk that you should head and focus for example, career life that is suitable for disabled people, and often your dreams can be guided through that lens, that what you can do when you are disabled, what you should do when you are disabled, and in what kind of areas are you supposed to be included in the society when we are thinking, for example, hobbies and as such. And inclusion in all of these areas is important because that create and that disabled youth have a say and can dream about their future, in their own kind of future, that they are limited in other people's views of what disabled people can do and can't do, because the ability to dream and plan for the future creates the vision of the capability to plan about things everyone is passionate about, that and creates the vision of that life isn't already decided because of my disability. The third part is inclusion in the world around you, the ability to impact the world around you. That in this area, I talk about political, societal inclusion, the way to make a difference. This type of inclusion is really important because disabled people and disabled youth face a discrimination all over the world, and to be able to survive from that, it has to be the thought that I can make something about this situation. I can do something about it. Things can be done. Through that, it is really important that we need to make sure that every time we plan to include young people in political decision making, or want to hear thoughts about the local or global issues from children and young people, that those places are also accessible for disabled youth. They are often not. We need to see the inclusion of disabled youth from a large point of view, and I think these three standpoints that I made are a great start to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana, very much. Actually, I think that every disabled person which heard your speech now wants to hug you, at least, because you guided very, very thoroughly and in very touch points, needed touch points, which most of the people feel. Still, I have several questions. I would like to maybe go into several details is about your inclusiveness and your inclusion. And maybe you could gather some main touch points, like one life event, two life events, which you feel like were quite a life-changing into the including of a society, into your inclusion into the society, either in school, in university, or in other area, which you would kind of make it as a remark.
I would actually go really far back. I think I have two examples from my early childhood. One time it was at the medical office. We had a great deal of planning to make a huge back operation to me. It would be 12-hour operation, and it would impact my mobility really much. It would, and there wasn't certainty that it would be a good operation, that it would be successful. And at that time, the medical professionals still wanted to do it, but then my mother had a conversation with me, and we had a really thoughtful conversation with my mother. I was 11, and we talked about it together. And I told her that the thought of the operation would be scary, and I said to her that I've learned to live with my mobility now for 11 years. It kind of isn't much, but of course, when you think about how children develop within movement as such, it is kind of much. And the operation would have meant that I would have to learn a whole new type of mobility after that, and I didn't want that because I was content with the mobility I had, and my mother heard my point and understood that, and together with my father, they said to the medical staff that they didn't want the procedure being done to me, and the procedure was never done, and I'm really happy about that, and I will always remember that as this kind of remarkable conversation and inclusion for such a young me, to be able to have say in my own life, in my own body, what is done to my body as such. So of course these examples of in inclusion, there are many through my life, even later years, but I think and why I think it's so important to focus to the very early life of disabled youth is because those early memories of inclusion are so significant.
Another question from my side would be about even about maybe from different perspective from Dr. Weber's overlook on the last COVID-based effect on youth and young people and children in schools. And you also mentioned that area that someone tries to actually save you or pre-decide before anything happened to you, and like make sure that you're the controlling part of to be for you as safe as possible, to make safe decisions, yeah. And the controlling part went not into your hands in certain areas, but in others' hands. What do you think would be like first several steps in order for, let's say, parents or teachers in the school, how we could make this change and make their mindsets change from as a starting point within these like safe territories?
Yeah, the conversation about safety is really important when we are discussing disabled youth, and especially young children with disabilities. I believe, and I think many of you also recognize that that often the need to secure the life of disabled children is really high. And I mean in a way where children with no disabilities often play hard and hurt themselves and test their limits and learn about life through that, and often those kinds of activities are seen to be more dangerous with disabled children. And of course, sometimes there is disabled people often have different type of fragilities, but in their body. But I would also like to focus on that we need to learn those things too. We need to learn our limits. We need to be able to play hard and fail hard, because I understand the need to be especially protective of disabled youth, but that also limits us to seek our own boundaries and and to see our own limits. I think where we should start from the change is that we need to have discussions that do we make these kind of situations where we let disabled children fail and fall, because that is important aspect of human life. But and if we are protected from that, we are not learning those important areas in life.
So in general, it is about, because we have also on slido.com question about how make people with disabilities more confident, how boost their confidence. It is about their own decisions and letting to decide on their own. Yeah. So thank you, Jan.
And also it's really important to let disabled children and youth do and choose bad decisions.
Thank you very much, Jana, for your short introduction into your area and very, very close and sensitive topic. We will move to Merete, who will represent Nordic Welfare Center study about welfare in disability area and what we could do with that, yes? So Merete, the floor is yours.
Thank you for giving me the floor. And thank you to the story just told. I think it really gives us a good insight in how empowering support of decision making is and self-determination. My name is Merete Løberg, and I work at the Nordic Welfare Center. We work closely with Nordic institution Nordic, who also is here today, and we are a knowledge-based organization, and we aim to contribute to development of welfare initiatives, and we aim to share knowledge throughout the Nordic region, and especially now we also look into children and welfare issues. And our latest report that we were commissioned to write on behalf of the Nordic Council of Ministers and the Nordic, the Children's Committee, is about how the Nordic societies work to include and hear children and youth with disability. So this report covers some key definitions and concepts in how we can apply the Children's Rights Article number 12, and the right to be heard, seen and involved in all decisions that to children and youth. But also we look into the closely link between the articles, the Article 7 in the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It's important that everyone that works with children and youth acknowledges that these two rights have to be seen together, because this Article 7 in the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities really underlines that children and youth with disabilities, to a further extent, should be supported to have a say. In the report, you will be introduced to a range of key actors in the Nordic region that has a special role and responsibility in letting people, young people and children have a say. And we line out how you can apply some of the measures that are important. We also introduce you to a broad range of practice throughout the Nordic region, good methodology, and we have found a lot of good practices with help of our Nordic expert groups. Our main aim is to provide insight in how this right can be secured and also secured to a greater extent than is already today. And we also give a short insight to some of the main barriers throughout the region and in different areas of children and youth life. We also give some final considerations. During the work with collecting best practices and knowledge and mapping out key actors, we were lucky enough to have youth delegates with us all the way. They have been giving us advice, and their advice are quoted throughout the report. And one of the main points they pointed out to us is that it's important that society start to see children and young people with disabilities as a resource, and that we enable them to be that and to provide them with proper education and work. So, in the report, we have a detailed mapping of the range of key actors in the region, and they're covering all areas of children and youth's lives. And it's important to acknowledge that this covers all children and youth, also children and youth with different disabilities. Each country is represented, and also Åland, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands. And in this mapping, you can find a brief introduction to the role of responsibilities to each of these actors. And a link is provided in the report, so you can go in and follow up for further reading. The Nordic youth delegates pointed out that one of the main problems and barriers they face is that the expectations of children and young people with disabilities are too low. And we have also heard so throughout this conference. And they are met with prejudice and ignorance. And for example, what is required, for example, to work with people with disabilities. So, I've been asked to also give you a short insight to 3 best practices. And it's a lot of them in the report, so this only covers a small part of them. In Norway, we have youth council and youth councils in all municipalities and county municipalities. They also often cooperate with the Disability Council. This is an advisory body in the municipalities and the county municipalities. They're mandatory, and all matters concerning young people shall be submitted to these councils, and they can also raise issues themselves. Some of the youth councils also are given funding for applying measures on behalf of their fellow youth and children. The purpose, of course, of the Youth Council is to help ensure a broad, open, and accessible participation in all matters concerning children and youth in the local community. These kind of youth councils are also effective in other countries in the Nordic region. So you can go in and read more about that. Yeah. You have to be strong to get your rights. The weakest children and young people with disabilities don't always get the help they need, but the strongest do. It's difficult to get the right help if you don't speak the language of the system. This is pointed out from the youth delegates throughout the report, and this applies to the structural barriers that they meet. So, I wanted to share with you a sort of simple measure that it can be made, because sometimes we make it too difficult, and we think it's too difficult to listen to young people and children. And starting to support children in communicating and starting language building early on, that's the main point. So Lego has made braille bricks, and the main point with these braille bricks is to allow sighted and blind pupils and family members equal conditions to interact. And by 2020, around 20 countries in the Nordic region have received Lego boxes donated to schools and enterprises working with blind children and inclusive learning in the age between 4 and 10. The purpose is to play and learn and to have cooperate with fellow pupils that are sighted. The last example I will show with you takes us into a more serious matter. Snakke med barn is a digital knowledge training portal. The name translates to talk with children. This you can find online. It's designed to guide adults into conducting conversations with children and young people they are concerned about, including when adults suspect violence, abuse, bullying, or other serious matters. The portal is interactive, so it's aiming to increase knowledge and professional knowledge and primarily offer also active skills for helpers to conduct safe conversations. And the opportunity to have safe conversation with an adult will make the child feel less alone and will further the child towards following up so they can have a better life. The methods are based on research, knowledge, and theories about the cognitive level of children in different ages, and supports their ability to express themselves verbally. And if you do some mistakes, the simulated conversation will take you back to the start. So you will be taught how to conduct a good and safe guarded conversation. The training platform is universally designed. It has, though, a little limit. It's challenging to use it with children with major cognitive disabilities. Thank you. I think I'll stop there and perhaps if anyone has some questions.
Thank you very much. We have actually plenty of questions. I'm very proud of our public. I know that we won't be able to cover fully everything still maybe on this session, but during the coffee break, please feel free to reach our panelists, plus reach out to Jana via inclusiveyouth.org and definitely via emails. Jana is still with us, as I understand, yes? Yeah, most probably, I really hope so.
Do you want this one?
From technical point of view, we still don't know, but we are hoping. Yes, Jana with us. So we definitely, I think, can reach. And we have one question about inclusiveness. What have the panelists thought about the inclusion of disabled children and youth in schools? And Marta, you already spoken a little bit about the research and about the representation part. Yeah. So what are your ideas? How currently on maybe not only Sweden, but on a more Scandinavian level, children, if we feel inclusive into their school participation?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Into the school participation. The youth, the disabled youth, children, are we represented enough in schools? Do we feel represented? Do we know where to actually have a call for help, have a call for being spoken for, and etc.?
No, I don't think children and youth at all feel that they have the right to say in all the matters that concern them in school at all. And it's true even to a greater extent for children and youth with disabilities. So I think that's a challenge, and I think we see that a lot of teachers perhaps think it's, I think they make it too hard just to ask and to involve children and youth to a greater degree. I think we adults, maybe sometimes we overcomplicate things.
Jana, you went through it by yourself in Finland school. So what was your thoughts about that, about representation of youth with disabled people in school, about inclusiveness?
I think that in school life there are many places where youth is heard and can be included in the decision making, but often we see this kind of segregation in hearing young people, that there are those hearing opportunities for youth in general, and there are hearing possibilities for disabled youth. And I think it is really important to try to make these kind of hearings for all youth also accessible through language, through infrastructure, through different structures that children and youth with disabilities could attend. And I also believe that there is a need for the hearings of issues and things concerning only disabled youth, because there are many aspects in this kind of in the discrimination that and troubles that are faced when you are young disabled people, and those problems also need the space to be heard.
Thank you very much. And we are running quite a short of time, but we have one very exciting topic still, which will be represented by Ulrika, which is Managing Director at Parasport organization in Sweden. I know that winter is coming, and after we talked on very serious topics, and it is a serious topic also, but the more shiny twists of activities after the school. And I had a question in Slido.com. I seen, what about activities after the school? What to do after school? About sports. So I think Ulrika will guide us through mentorship and activities in Paralympics, which could be inclusive. Floor is yours, Ulrika.
Thank you very much. I don't know if my presentation is coming up. There. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very, very important conference. I would gladly try to answer any more questions afterwards, and these are my contacts. I work as a managing director for the Swedish Parasport Federation, and we organize sports through 500 clubs in Sweden. And the children or the persons that we offer sports for is with the impaired movement, impaired vision, and intellectual disabilities. And in Sweden, we have a vision that everyone that would like to do sports should be included in the sport federation where you make sport. For instance, if you want to play football, you should play football with everyone. Every club should be included. We are not there now, but we work towards that goal. And I would say that in some sports it's easier. I know that swimming, they are very much included in Sweden, and also riding and other sports. So we're working very much towards that. And that's also like a vision that really a parasport federation shouldn't really be needed to exist. That's sort of our end goal. But we're a 50-year-old organization, and we are very much needed. And what I would like to share today is like projects that we can do to help the sport as a whole. I just have one more slide. We talked a little bit about pandemic before, and we have some really, really new figures. When we compare children in activity that are 7 to 16 years old, and these children are also children that has a disability. When we look at the figures from 2019 in the spring and now this spring, we have 67% less activity in this group. And as we before talked about children in general, these are the figures for children that has a disability. So this is really challenging way forward, that we all need to do lots of things so that everyone can get into activity. But what I would like to share with you today is a project that we started just before the pandemic, and it's so interesting because lots of things that Jana said and Merete said, I think I'm going to wrap it all up. We wanted to show how sport could be inclusive, and we had this idea about mentorship. Yesterday we talked about this buddy system. And we wanted to put together, Jana said it's so good, we have to make wrong, we have to fail, we have to do mistakes. And we want to have a child that has a disability that get a mentor that also has a disability. And together they get such a good match to do all these things that Jana was talking about. I'm going to show you. This is Frida to the left and Philip to the right. And Frida is the project manager of this project. She's also very good at table tennis. And what we want with this project is that the mentor has a possibility to give back to the society, and that the child can get a more independent life. Turns out that the children ask these mentor different questions than they do to their parents. Maybe they ask Frida, do you have a driving license? Was it hard? Do you think I can get that? And that maybe isn't something you can ask your parent. Frida and Philip they have done select the process. This has been an application form, and they have to apply for this mentorship. And then they are chosen and get training. And the children, we call them the adepts or something, they are between 7 and 25. So this is a child youth project. This is another of our mentor, Sonja, and she's very much into winter sport. She's a snowboarder herself, and she is aiming to get to Peking, to Beijing, to Paris. I don't really know if she's going to make it, but she's trying. And she is such a role model, and this is her quote, why she wants to be a mentor. And we see this very much as role models. Because it's very, very important that it's not a parent, it's not an assistant. It is this role model that you can ask questions that you should feel safe and ask questions that you don't normally do. And it's also very important that the activities that they do, they are chosen from what the child or the youth would like to do, not what the parent thinks or what would be suitable. And it can also be something, I really would like to have tried this, but I don't really know if I'm going to like this, but please, can you help me? So the aim is going to be a physical activity. I come from a sport federation, so we like it to be a sport. It could also be a culture and other things. I know they've done a lot of climbing, for instance. But we want it to be physical activities. And as I said before, that the mentor really can share the challenges that they themselves have discovered. They feel a bit like, okay, you don't have to try, you don't have to start where I was. I can take you one step further. It's both in school and spare time. I said Jana put it quite low, well, and you also talked about low expectations. We know in Sweden it's mandatory to have sport in school, but not if you have a disability. Maybe you can say that, no, maybe we can't do this, you don't have to do that. And we think that it shouldn't be so easy. It should be that maybe the mentor could help you to get around that. How could you think that sport is fun and challenging for you as well? So if the child would like help in school, that's also a possibility. This is another quote. I feel that I dare to try new things when I have my mentor. She knows what is possible for me, and she's not ashamed over her wheelchair, and neither am I. We have made this project together with 3 municipalities, and it's very interesting when you start work with a municipality because you never really know what's going to happen. And what we found out was that the municipalities really felt like, oh, they really have so much experience that we need. And the mentors have been like a hidden resource for every municipality. And they have been, during the pandemic, so many activities were shut down, as I showed in the beginning. They have been helping the municipalities in everything from accessible areas until communication. This is Malmö, who is a town in south of Sweden. They have on their website, book a Parasport, that's what it said there. And they have, so this has been more visible, so that you can get help and get a mentor for lots of things. We are really, the project has ended now. It will end now in the end of December, but the municipalities would like to continue. So we're really happy about this, and we have also got some other really nice quotes from the mentors that say, I have really been waiting for this. I have been waiting to see how I can contribute to get a more inclusive society, and that we together, that this is seen as a power. This is a power couple for me, really. I love these pictures, and they are not fake, they are real. This is what we do. We have snow also. This is Sonia.
You haven't photoshopped those.
Yeah, no Photoshop. So I'm really happy that the project will continue, and that we see this project as hidden resources, really, and the possibility to try, and yeah, this is for real. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ulrika. Very impactful presentation. Several maybe technical questions. What would you see as a bottleneck and the biggest, not a risk maybe, but the problem, how to start this project in other countries? What would you like overflow if Lithuania, Estonia, or Finland would like to start similar mentorship program? What would we have to prepare firstly?
I think you have to find some municipalities that like to start. We started out with 3. And when you have that, because I think that these mentors here, they like to be in some kind of organization. And it's hard for a sport federation as us to drive that. We can take care of the sports, that's our responsibility. But there's so much else that these mentors can do. There's no limit. So I think if you start with 3 municipalities, then it isn't really hard. It's really to get the arena to so that they understand that these are important resources. They are there. You have them as well.
Another question from my side would be about the opportunities within Parasport, because there are loads of different areas like football, skiing, and etc. Do you have any basis, any information where and which way region, for example, what sports we could attend and what sports we have as a, maybe not from a mentors program, but in general from technical perspective, technical resources are available and etc. Are you gathering this information?
Yeah, we have a platform called Para-me, and it is, for instance, I would click in that this is my age, this is my disability, I really like ball sports, I want to do it as a team, and then I get suggestions on what clubs that has that for me. And we have been working about 2 years to encourage clubs to get into this system, and it was ready just when the last year. So now we really hope that children will find their way here, and it's sometimes not that easy, but sometimes it's not that hard either. So we have helped the clubs a lot, but they think it's harder than it is.
Another question from my side would be about contribution into these kind of projects from government side and from our personal side. And what would you say? What are the percentages, or maybe the more important contribution is there from government to push these projects, or from personal care that we have to from ourselves?
In the beginning, it started out as we got some governmental grant. It's an organization called Vinnova who works with new ideas, really. And that was a startup, and the municipalities didn't have to pay in the beginning. But now they are paying. Now when it continues, we got no governmental grants, but the 3 municipalities go together and pay, and they have some budget areas in their own municipality budgets, but maybe they didn't know what to do with these, and now we have the project. So it isn't really about the money. It is more about the mindset, I would say.
I'm very glad about all of these presentations, and from Ulrich and from Mert and from Jan, and especially with these researches done and the best practices already shared and given from Mert and Ulrika. And I think if some of the countries from Nordics, from Baltic region wants to start something similar, definitely can reach you, probably, yes? Yeah, I think that is a positive answer.
Sure.
We have still several questions, but we won't be able to cope all of them because some of them we have already answered during presentations of itself. So once again, if you have any question after the coffee break or via slido.com, the presenters, the panelists will be able to answer these questions. And I would like just to take several minutes left to actually tell my own story. Very fastly, without any of a presentation, but the story how you can be on a daily basis inclusive and how it can change your perspective. So although I have a disability, but I have 2 main things actually which changed my life personally, and I would say how it was inclusive into the society as a life changing. So I was actually learning 3.5 years at home. Teachers were coming to my home, and I was changing the school from primary to gymnasium. And gymnasium said, why we should learn you at home when you can, okay, if your parents are available to get you to the school, you can have around 65% of actual lessons in the first floor, which is acceptable for you, with your classmates, with your classrooms, yeah, and other 35 with different timetable. And it was like very simple solution, which, worked for both of the parts, for gymnasium and me. But as a teenage year, as a youth who had, the main period in their life to become a social person, to become a very strategic one, I think it is one of the key things how simply we can adapt and include people with disability without even very huge needs, very huge investments, just by opening our mindset and opening our hearts. Another thing I would call our organization, our Hero Talents Agency, which is first unique models agency, which is focused on people with disabilities and inclusive them into mass media, that through partnership, through actually social skills, that most of the people would like to be heard, known, to get into some areas, financial areas, where we see on the TV screens commercials. So these communities, these agencies like that, definitely spread the word and help to speak up. And all of you today, 3 of you said 2 key things, as I heard, that in order to include and encourage, firstly, we have to trust people and youth and children with disability that they can speak up on their own, and definitely ask for them what are their needs and not to decide for them before the action. Yes? So thank you very much once again for all of the panelists. Thank you very much for all of the persons who attended via online and via physical here. And if you have any more questions, I think Mantas will be related to go to the topics. Yes?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for such an interesting panel and just sharing your good practices in your countries and just trying to include more people. We can see that we have just time for one question from the audience, which is addressed to Jana. And the question sounds like this. How do you think we can build more confidence in the disabled youth? So.
I think the answer to the very precise question is also precise. We need to hear, believe, and let disabled children do things, act on their behalf. We need to be able to hear disabled children's dreams, hopes, and support them vividly.
Okay, thank you so much for the answers. And now, dear panelists, thank you once again so much for such an interesting panel. And I advise all of you to go to our little coffee break, which will be 15-minute short break. And to the listeners beyond the screen, sitting at home, we invite you to grab a coffee yourself and stay tuned for other discussions that will come right here shortly. So, see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, welcome back, everybody. And first thing I want to say, I feel as if I don't even need Elon Musk's invention, the Neuralink, because these panels and this information was just going straight into my brain and into my head. And I'm so glad to have that information now because of all of you. So, such a splendid and informative panel discussions. Wouldn't you agree, Angelica?
I just really couldn't say better, Mantas, and I feel like we're gonna have some Elon Musks in the social area as well, popping up after all this good case practice sharing out there. So, but our fulfilling journey hasn't ended yet, and I would like to introduce all of us to today's last discussion on the topic of building child-responsive communities, and the moderator, Diana Hune. She is currently a researcher at Nordic in Stockholm, where she works with green and inclusive development in Nordic cities and regions. And so please welcome warmly our Diana on stage.
Thank you so much, Angelica and Mantus, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. I feel like I'm standing among friends already as we're nearing the end of this conference. But first of all, thank you to the Nordic Council of Ministers office in Lithuania for hosting this event. And it is with great pleasure to be moderating this final discussion, this session that we'll have, the mayor's panel with children hackathon winners. And over the past 2 days, we touched on a range of interesting topics, hopeful and at times very challenging issues related to children and youth. But I feel like in this coming discussion, we'll get to bring this home a little bit when we'll talk about, who are the ones who can act on change, and where does that happen? Where do we begin with building child-responsive communities and inclusive cities? We know that 2/3 of the targets set forth in the Sustainable Development Goals will not be reached without the action of local and regional actors. And we also know that a city that's fit for all is also one that takes into consideration the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So it is with great pleasure that I have with me our panelists today. From the Nordic Baltic region, from Lithuania, we have Mindaugas Sinkevičius. He is the president of the Lithuanian Association of Municipalities and the mayor of Jonava. Welcome. Also from Lithuania, we have with us Lotte Ton. No, sorry, from Estonia, we have Lotte Tonupart, the team that won the hackathon. Hi, Lotte. And then from Finland, I'm pleased to introduce Aino-Maija Lukkonen. She is the mayor of Pori. And from Norway, we have Berit Hundula, who is the mayor of Vefsn municipalities. And finally, we have Ott Kasuri, and he's the development manager at the Association of Estonian Cities and Municipalities. And unfortunately, we were supposed to have Sunniva Befring from Norway with us. She was on the other winning team from the hackathon, but it seems like she's not been able to join us as of yet. So without much further ado, I would like our mayors and or the leaders of our cities and association to introduce them shortly. And then after that, Lotte, it will be great to hear the pitch that you guys presented at the Child Friendly City Hackathon a few weeks ago. So how about we start with Aino-Maija? Please, could you tell a little bit about yourself and the work that you do with children and youth in your municipality?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and best regards from Pori, which is located on the west coast of Finland. And we have 83,000 inhabitants in the city of Pori. And as a mayor, so I'm responsible for the educational sector as well. So in Finland, the municipalities are responsible for the primary education and for the upper secondary education, and as well for the vocational education. And we have a youth council, and the young people, they have the right to participate in the council meetings. They have the right to express themselves there, but they can't participate in the votings. And as well, the members of the youth council are entitled to participate in the committees working and to express themselves there. And then we know what the young people think about different things. And it's important that they can participate in the planning procedures. Like now we are preparing the city strategy, the new city strategy. And it's important to hear their voice as well.
Much, Aino-Maija. And Mindaugas, perhaps you'd like to say a few words about the work you do in Jonava.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mindaugas Sinkevičius. I'm mayor of Jonava district municipality that contains 42,000 inhabitants. And I'm also president of Association of Local Authorities of Lithuania, meaning that we have 60 municipalities in total in my country, and there are all under one umbrella organization. Similarly to my colleague that was just previously taking the floor, as a mayor, I'm also responsible for education, both formal and informal, and sports and youth activities. We also have a youth council, which is also a composition of both two parties: youth representatives from youth organizations and representatives from local administration in equal sizes, 50-50%, meaning like 6 young individuals, and 6 employees from administration. We gathered together to decide upon various youth issues in my municipality. They also have funding for various youth projects. So I think that we also have a certain platform for youth engagement. Whether it is enough, I'm not sure. Being well, considering myself, at least in my heart, a young person, I would like to see more and more people engaged in the life of my city. But they actually do, and to some extent, they do it mainly through social platforms where they raise questions, raise issues, raise problems, and many times they also provide solutions and their ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindaugas. And let's hear from Berit and Vefsn municipality.
And I'm the mayor of Vefsn kommune just in the middle of Norway, in the southern part of northern Norway. We are a small community, 13,500 inhabitants, and the city Mosjøen in the middle of the community. We have worked with the youth for many, many years, and we have a youth council, and the youth is participating. The leader of the youth council is participating in all our political meetings, both most of the meetings he can participate, or she. They can also speech. They can suggest things. They are not available. They have no voting rights. But we have made a model called the Mosjøen model, and this is the way to municipality of Vefsn. We have systemized it in its work with participation for young people. So we have a political and administrative zone, and there we also have the youth participating. So this year we won the prize for being the national youth community in Norway, and we are very proud of this because this shows that the youth is satisfied with the work politicians do, and they're also satisfied with the ways we have worked for becoming this good community for youth in our region. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Berit, and it's wonderful to hear that across your municipalities, given their different context and population size, I mean the youth have a strong voice in your communities, and then finally, Ott. You're the development manager of the association, but I forgot to mention you have also been the former deputy mayor of the municipality of Hurku in Estonia. So I guess you can also share some of your experience from this previous work as well. But also more broadly about how, I guess, with your overview of how all the municipalities in Estonia work on children and youth issues.
Thank you. In Estonia, we have a law about local municipalities, and one of the responsibilities also is working with youth and children. Of course, in Estonia, we have the same organization as in Lithuania. We have umbrella organization, Association of Estonian Cities and Municipalities. We have now 79 municipalities, and the size is bigger than 5,000 inhabitants must be, but the biggest municipality in Estonia is a city of Tallinn for more than 400,000 inhabitants. So the size of those municipalities is quite different. Why there is no mayors from Estonia today? Because we just had an election for the local municipality elections in Estonia, and the mayors and governments is not ready to participate on such kind of lovely event, but we have today. I was also elected 10 times to the municipality of Harku, and my last job was in the municipality of Harku, also to organize and lead the commission of the education, youth work, and sport activities and leisure times. And so the area is well known, and we have also the youth parliament municipalities in Estonia second time. And we have a lot of activities and supporting action for the children. And the system's mostly the same as from the Nordic countries. But what we have still one exception, what the other municipalities in Baltic and Nordic, they have. We give a chance to participate and give a vote for the young people in Estonia. 16 years old youngsters then can be elected and they participate in local elections. And that's unique. And my suggestion to the other countries, Nordic and Baltic countries, please do the same. Give the rights to the youth. Vote 16 years young people, and their life will be better in local municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ott. And how wonderful to hear that young people can stand for election in Estonia. And thank you all for that. We'll delve into more about the nuts and bolts of your work. But now I'm looking forward to hear from Lotte Tunnepart and your team. And I didn't catch the name of your teammates, Lotte, so perhaps they can introduce themselves shortly before you guys do the pitch. But now Lotte will present her winning case. So a few weeks ago, Angelica mentioned this yesterday at the opening, that the Nordic Council of Ministers office here in Lithuania co-hosted with UNICEF Lithuania and other organization a hackathon for young people over the course of 2-3 days, where they co-created new ideas for what would make or for what they would like to see in their local communities. So there were 3 winning teams, and now Lotte, please present your idea for Green Waves.
Okay, hello. I'll do a small introduction first. So I am Lotte Tunnepart, and our team, classmates, and it was like 3 days of hard work, and I'm really excited to show what we got. Can you show my screen? Yeah, thank you. So our team is Green Wave, and we want to ask you a question. So look at these 2 pictures and put yourself in the shoes of a school kid. You have to spend 5 to 8 hours in one of these 2 rooms. Which one would you choose? It would obviously be the one with greenery, the one on the right. So the problem is that there isn't any greenery outside 3/4 of the year, because the climate is so cold here that greenery just cannot live outside, and also schools inside lack greenery, and inside the schools there's a kind of stuffy air. And our solution would be to install plant walls in schools. Walls because it saves space, and plants because they have a lot of benefits. I'll go over them later. And we would like to put a school logo in the middle of it, so schools can take pictures in front of it, show that there's a green school, so other schools will catch on with the idea, and finally all schools will have our idea. So in the future, we want all schools and kindergartens to implement our idea, and these walls will promote teamwork and healthy eating, and also learning about biology. And if we really get down the idea of how to do these walls, we would like the plants to be in compliance with the school's biology curriculum, so kids can look at the plants, learn and touch them, learn about them, or the plants will be edible, so kids can learn about good and nutrition and growing plants themselves. There are quite a lot of benefits for plants, like reducing CO2, absorbing a lot of noise, especially in schools. It's important to absorb noise because there are a lot of people here running around talking, so the quieter the better. And also it makes you more attentive, it's easier to study, and it's relaxing. And why our team? Why our team is so good? First, we provided affordable plant walls because we will install them ourselves, and by doing that, the cost will go down because we're not going to have so much money for the installation process. We will market our idea to schools directly. We'll go into schools, we'll talk about it. We want them to really implement our idea. We'll promote greenery, and also we are already familiar with plant life and growing plants, so it's not an impossible task. And the most important is that in Estonia, no other firm makes plant walls for educational purposes, and we really want to kids to learn with their own hands about biology or growing plants. This is like a prototype, but there are like a lot of different ways it can go. Like if it's edible plants, it will look a bit different. And about the construction, well, the plants will be chosen according to the school's needs. So do they want edible? Do they want for the school? Do they just want beauty plants? And construction, we'll do it ourselves. And the watering system, it's going to be depending on what the school has. If the school has a gardener or a caretaker, then the plants will be watered by that person. And if it doesn't, we will have to make a watering system. Thank you.
Thank you, Lotte, to you and your teammates. It sounds like you guys put in a lot of effort into developing this idea within a short amount of time. Could you tell us a little bit more, sort of like about the process of the hackathon and how you came up with this? I mean, you identify the need for this, and given that there have been no other plant walls for educational purposes in Estonia, could you just share a little bit more about how that was, and what were the challenges, and did you consider other ideas that you thought would be very relevant to your local context?
Sure. So we thought of the idea because we looked outside, and it's winter is gonna come soon. So we looked outside, all the trees are dying, and it's quite depressing if you look outside. And we wanted to have like greenery that we can look at. So that's where the idea came from. And the process was that we had 3 days of like rigorous work. We did 8-hour days, I think. We come like at 9 and we finish at 6 or 9 or like really late at night. And it was like, we really have to think, we have to use every moment we can to develop our idea because we had so little time, but I think it worked out quite well. And we had another idea in the process of it. One of our mentors talked about maybe making tea walls. We thought it would be, because tea is very small, it wouldn't look as effective. So we changed the idea to what we have now.
Great. Well, congratulations on winning the prize. And I hope that that's only the point of departure for a lot of change that you and your team will be making at your school, but also in your city. I mentioned that Sunniva Befring and Team Firde from Norway was also meant to present their idea, but since she's not here, I'd just like to mention that she would have spoken about their vision for this youth center in their local community. So that would have been nice to hear about as well. But I'd like now to get back to our panel and your thoughts on this. I mean, you give young people 3 days and put them in a room and they come up with this. What's your immediate thoughts to this type of initiatives? And have you done hackathons like this when trying to solve for issues in your municipalities? And some reflection on Lotte's ideas, but also more broadly, like how would you absorb these type of initiatives in your work? We could start with Berit. You're on mute, Berit.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. This was a very good idea. As you know, I live in northern Norway, and we have the same problem here as in the rest of northern Europe. It will be winter soon, and it's no green trees outside. I think this was a very good idea. It, as she said, it would be much better inside the big rooms or schools or whatever, where you have lots of plants. So this could absolutely become an idea also for us in my community. And when you know that they have only been together for 3 days, this was a very good idea. You have the environmental issue in this at the same time as you have the issues around feeling well. Yeah.
Thank you, Berit. Yes, indeed. I mean, research has shown that there is a very positive correlation about the access to green spaces and the health and well-being of not just children and young people, but also everyone. So that's very important. But then, Ott, what are your thoughts on the team's point in addressing this kind of in an Estonian context, where plant walls could perhaps be more widely thought about in an educational setting?
Absolutely, idea is very good. Also, Estonian children is quite good on this area, and the green wall for the plants is very nice. I know that in every school they have a room also where they have a kitchen. They are cooking food for herself, and they have lessons, home care lessons, and etc. Maybe the spices is also quite nice to have there in a wall. But I know also in my municipality, in Harku municipality, I have 8 kindergartens, and mostly in our kindergartens, small children are doing the same things already last 5 or 10 years. In one of my kindergarten in Rannamõisa, they are growing also the green onions inside of the children living rooms, and also they have a greenhouse outside of the kindergarten. Of course, Harku municipality is situated outside of Tallinn city, and we have a lot of green space and green areas. So in city areas and city school, it might be a very good idea. And also the wall paint was very nice, the green one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ott. Mendaugas, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yes, certainly. When Lotte was presenting her and her team's idea, I was looking around in my office, looking for much of the greenery, but there is something behind, back by my back. But usually in my cabinet, in my office, I usually either have cactuses or plants that they don't require much, treatment and looking care of. So yes, looking at the idea, I was like thinking, how could it be done in my office as well? Where to buy that? And coming from that, I think that it's always good that children, youth have ideas, and they propose their ideas through the hackathon or any other mechanisms that we have, youth councils or whatever. But what is very most important, I think, is the initial or final stage is the implementing of the ideas. So having a good idea is one thing, but implementing the good idea is, that's the final and most probably not the least stage of the when coming to the real result. So similarly to a hackathon that was initiated through the 3 days, In Lithuania, we have also, it's not something that we don't act in a form of hackathons, but there's another form. I can tell you shortly about it. In our schools, in our municipalities, in our schools, we tend to have this participatory budget, meaning that the administration of a school says to the community, both to the teachers, pupils, okay, we have an annual allocation of maybe 5,000 euros. Please propose your ideas. What can we do in our environment, in our classes, in our canteen? What can we do? Is it either a furniture solution? Is it some festival that could be made through this participatory budget? So, and the youth pupils, teachers, they provide their ideas. Then there's as in many communities, a voting, so a list of ideas, and the community at school votes. We need to have, I don't know, some kind of thing outside that makes us happy during the summer days. Some kind of, where you can sit and relax and enjoy the sun through the breaks of classes.
Yeah.
So, and that's also, I think, a good idea how to interact and get young people involved.
Thank you so much, Mindaugas, and I think you touch upon a really important point there on the issue of budgeting and financing these initiatives, and how do you allocate the resources that you have within your local budget, not towards efforts to children and youth, but also in combination with other activities that will ensure kind of social and environmentally sustainable development in your communities. So I'd like to actually, perhaps, Aida Maya, would you like to address that in more detail, how in Pori you work with this on a more technical level? How do you distribute resources when it comes to perhaps implementing initiatives that Lotte and her team, for instance, are suggesting that a city could do?
Thank you. And thank you for the good idea of green wall, because the timing is very good, because we are just starting to construct a new school building for 600 pupils. So it's a good idea which can very well be implemented here in Pori. But otherwise, we have also a participatory budgeting, which is called welfare money. So if a group of people or citizens have a good idea, if they want to organize an event or something like that, so they can apply for that welfare money, and so they can get resources to implement it, and also young people can do it, groups of young people. So, but thank you for the good idea. I'll forward it to the people responsible for the construction work.
Well, I hope this could also spur more interest in arranging hackathons when a city is in need for new solutions. Clearly, the youth have plenty of excellent ideas. And Lotte, what do you think when you hear these responses from city leaders and associations?
It sounds like they like our idea, and I like to hear that. And we will definitely do our idea. We will actually want to do it, and it's very nice to hear that some people think that they would also like us to do it, and we have people at our backs to support us if we want to go on.
Thank you. Well, I hope that with the winning prize that you received, you and the other winning teams will keep advocating and pushing for change and implementing your ideas. But I'm sure that's just the start of many other action that you'd like to take in your local community. So thank you so much for sharing Green Wave with us. I'd like to kind of continue the conversation on, youth action involvement, because all of you mentioned that you have youth council that are involved in your municipalities. But as we've seen very recently, young people also want to see more than just green walls in their school building. Of course, that's really important, and that's kind of where their health and well-being is taken care of on a day-to-day basis. But a lot of young people are also very concerned about climate change and environmental issues, and they're taking to the streets. I mean, are these some of the issues that they also bring up in with you in the youth councils, and what other type of topics are they concerned about in your local communities? We could start with Berit.
Can you hear me? Fine, now you can hear me. Yeah, our youth council is concerned about both the environmental issues and also what's happening in our community. Once a year, our youth council organize a youth political day, and this is a political workshop planned and carried by only youth. No adults is allowed, and here they discuss important issues for the youth in our community. We also have a system called Team Youth Changes. It's a summer job for young people where they work from the youth council, and this we have every summer. We have also political workshops, and all the politicians are invited into political workshops every year. All the politicians in our council are participating in this. You are not allowed to go outside. You have to participate in this political workshop. It's very good because there the youth can communicate directly with the politicians in the council. And of course, the youth have other issues often than the grown-ups. And it's so important that we listen to the youth, and also that we implement their meanings into our politics. We in our community, I suppose we discuss the same issues as many other communities. It's economy, it's how many schools we should have, it's environmental problems, and the youth is always telling we always listen to their voice, and we not only listen, but they also advise us so we can do the right decisions. So we try to implement the youth in everything we do. The youth also have their own conferences. Now they are planning a big conference in our home city in March, where they invite youth from the whole country to come and discuss important issues. So we think that the idea behind this is that if we should be able to make a good hometown for the youth, so the youth would come back to the hometown after studying and after being somewhere else in the world, we have to see the youth, and we have to make them tell their voice, to listen to their voice, and that this is very important that we do. Yes.
Thank you, Berit. Yeah, that is so true, because we talk a lot about child-friendly cities, but building child-responsive communities also extend to more rural areas, and it's important that there's a demographic balance in these places, and but that still upholding the well-being and welfare of children and young people. Aina Maya, I would like to hear a little bit more from you about the issues that youth in Pori are concerned about.
Of course, young people are concerned about the climate change, and I can tell you an example of how all the schools are participating and can participate in that issue, which is one issue which is connected to the climate change, and that is how we can avoid food waste in the schools. You know that the school meals are not always attractive for young people, and we can cooperate when we plan the menus and how much the children want to eat and so on. And we can use that food which is not eaten by the school children, and we can give it to people, maybe poor people living around, and they are very happy for that also. And it has been, and we have been awarded for that also as a municipality. And also there is a question time for younger children or pupils every year, so that the politicians and young people can discuss with each other in the city council meeting room, and they have prepared questions which then are answered by the politicians. Or the politicians can ask questions, and they want to get the answers from the young people and children. For example, what do you think about the school meals or school transport or the buildings or so on? And it's a very good way of cooperation between the young people and the politicians.
Thank you. That sounds like also a very important issue. That's good to hear that young people are taking charge of, so to speak, in Pori. But then I would like to address Mindaugas and Ott as leaders of associations in Lithuania and Estonia, respectively. How do you work at the regional level or local level to monitor the work on children and youth? How do you evaluate the progress that you do on child's participation and then a range of other issues that they are concerned about? Mindaugas, you may start. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that coming to the previous question, I know that there's a lot of worldwide followers Greta Thunberg has, both in Lithuania as well. So we have those ecological and environment-related issues and raised by youth in Lithuania as well. But coming to how we monitor, that's a really good question, and I think that that's to some extent is maybe a difficult question, meaning although we have good ideas, although we bring as politicians support to implement them through projects, through hackathons, we have instruments to collect the ideas, but to some extent, when we monitor what's the engagement rate, what's the satisfaction, or what's the, I don't know, various parameters, how do we measure is the youth or pupils and young children are happy, satisfied with how the cities develop, with how they are possible to participate, to engage in various fields of cities life. So we in my municipality, and I know other colleagues do, we do, but I think that it needs more of a systematical approach. But how do we do it? We usually come up with sociological surveys. When we tend to put interviewees, either one population could be young generation from, I don't know, 10 to 18, then working population, then maybe elderly individuals of the city. And we are also attempt to ask them how we are satisfied with our public services, how we are satisfied with possibility to engage in various problem solving and so on. And it brings a lot of feedback. But from the systematical point of view, I think that we lack some systematic approach, in the sense that we tend to do those like every 3 years or so. And maybe sometimes from time to time, the questions raised changed, and it becomes difficult to compare then in the end. If you formulate one question now and some separate question after a few years, then it's difficult to compare. So in this sense, I bring it as a additional further on development question.
Thank you for that honest response, because indeed it is not an easy issue to take on. The follow-up work and the monitoring, it is a systematic kind of challenge. Ott, would you like to share a bit about how you work with that, or the challenges you face association-wide with this work?
Absolutely. The Nordic countries, they have a larger municipality associations and then more workers than we have. We have only 20 persons which are working here in everyday as I. But we are doing research things together with our Estonian government and parliament and the other institutions what we have in government level. So we just got 3 very fresh researches about well-being children and families, and how our school system and leisure time systems works. How much is a possibility to participate in kindergarten schools and club activities for sport and cultural events. But we are also monitoring in a country level well-being of youth work, and we have as we are the e-government country, we also have e-tools, and on the page of the Estonian finance ministry, you will find the results of how the local municipalities and city managed on that children and youth work field. And you can compare in which level you are. And there are 8 levels from first till 8. 8 is most the best one, and the first is not good. But under those levels, you can read how many youth leisure centers you have in your municipality, how much support money from the sports culture you give for the youth organization, and all those things are connecting, and you will got a quite nice picture, and you will compare the municipalities and cities compares with each others in which kind of level they are, and that is very valuable for self-evaluation.
Well, that sounds like you already have an index going there, and I think there's a lot the Nordic Baltic countries can learn from each other when it comes to the follow-up measures and this work on a broad range of youth and youth issues. Like yesterday, someone from Iceland was talking about the work they do on the child well-being dashboard. So I think there's a lot of conversation, that initiatives that could continue on so many sustainable development initiatives. I'm afraid we're running out of time in a bit, but I'd like to round it off with the final questions to Lotte. Are you with us, Lotte?
Yeah, I'm here.
I mean, as a wrapping up question, I'd like to give the floor to you and ask, if you were mayor for a day, what type of change would you like to see? What would you do to make sure that children are included and get to participate in your community?
That's quite a hard question. Well, I'd give them the power to make changes. I'd give them the power to actually change a law or something, like the power to vote on a decision. I would like to see like people who have kids no, I'll give kids like power to actually make a decision, and I think kids know very well what they need and want, and I would allow them to make an important decision for the city themselves.
Well, thank you. That's a good response. And, your generation are the agents of change. And perhaps we might not see all 16-year-old run for election across Europe quite yet, but it's quite cool to see that's being done in Estonia. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your inputs into this panel debate. I mean, I feel like this is just a point of departure for a lot of conversations to be had. And I encourage you all to continue to listen, link, and learn from one another as mayors, as the local leaders with the responsibility or possibility to make change in your respective countries and communities. I will leave the last few minutes then for questions, if there are any, to our panelists.
Indeed, we have some questions, and one specific question would be to all the mayors. All of you can answer this. How in your countries, municipalities, are young people with special needs involved in decision making, and what are the good practices of them being in politics? What can you comment on that? Thank you.
I can't see them, but if one of, or Aina Maya, perhaps you'd like to start responding to that question.
Any one of you can answer, meaning.
Question was, how do you work with the children with disabilities?
Yes, and how are they involved in politics? Yeah.
Yes, we have also a special council, or so to say, committee for disabled. So, for example, if we construct something, new buildings or so, new schools, so everyone has the right to use the facility and the possibility to use it, so that we can't restrict using all the facilities. So it's for everyone, and also in the schools, the schools are so to say, all the young people, all the children have the right to go to school in Finland. So we can say that we have so-called integrated schools, so that I think the society is quite equal in that sense. And in all the solutions made in the political decision making, we have to take care of those equal opportunities for everybody to participate in the society.
Thank you. Were there anyone else who'd like to respond to this, or if there's another question as well?
Yeah, maybe other mayors.
I saw Mr. Ott, I think, also would like to.
Yeah.
Ott, please.
The school system in Estonia also integrated and supporting, and in Estonia we have not no more schools from children for special needs. Mostly they have learning in the same environment, in the same school building, but they are only a few schools still what we have in a state level, what we have for those children which, for example, they can't see, and that's very different environment. But mostly the other children, they are learning and studying together, and we are supporting those things also in a local municipality level, because we have specialist units in our municipalities more and more, and those specialist units they'll help also those children which has special needs in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mantas?
So this is it. Maybe anyone from the audience here would like still to jump in. Well, so thank you very much, Diana.
Thank you. I'd like just to say, like, as the final takeaway point to this panel, is that a city that is fit for children is a city that's fit for all. So I hope that's also something that you will take at heart in your work, having listened to the ideas that Lotte and her team has had. And yeah, continue the great work with engaging children and youth in your day-to-day work. And thank you again so much for organizing this. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great. So thank you, Diana. We'll let you have a seat in the audience. And definitely after all of these great examples, you're going to have some job to research afterwards. That's really, really good.
So, yes.
Feels like, what do you feel, guys? We feel like we're coming a little bit to the end. And it was a lovely 2-day journey. It was really so many people involved in organizing and making this happen. And we feel like it's time to a little bit evolve. Who are those two people also hosting you on the stage? I hope we were helpful for you. I hope you really felt comfortable. And once again, I'm Angelica, and the reason I'm here, I lead already 4 years the NGO in Lithuanian Junior Achievement. And every day we work with entrepreneurship, financial literacy, education in schools for all. And we sometimes truly feel how kids from a very different backgrounds with a very different needs really flourish in the activities where they can learn by doing. When they start their own mini companies at school, when they start their own community solving projects on a social entrepreneurship, for example, when they start really feel themselves that they can count how much money people spend until they grow up till 18, right? So this is why this 2 day for me was really inspiring and encouraging to do even more to ensure that such a basic skills in the 21st century, like entrepreneurship skill, can definitely be affordable for every kid, despite their race, ability, or gender, right? So thank you so much. It was really, really great to be with you. And Mantas.
And giving true props to Angelica's organization, Junior Achievements, because when I was in high school, I firstly started my business ventures just because of that program. But talking about what I'm doing currently, well, I'm the CEO of an edtech company called Veba Lithuania. We're developing different edtech solutions for high school students, and our mission is to just help school students build a solid foundation for their future academic success. So we are very thrilled to have been here moderating for you, but that's not all. We still have one more beautiful speech to go, and here it is, the creme de la creme of this amazing conference. The person who made all of this possible. I'm talking about Helen Nielsen, the director of Nordic Council of Ministers Office in Lithuania. Helen, please take the stage.
Thank you, Angelica. Thank you, Mantas. Amazing to be hosted by you throughout this. So inspiring. And what a great conference we have had. And I hope you all have many good takeaways, increased knowledge, larger network, and many more, maybe more than that. But before I let you go, I need your help, both here in the room, but also online, to help me to summarize this conference. And I will be asked you to soon use the Slido. So Maybe the mobile is good to have next to you. But I can't be here on the stage alone. I will ask my beloved colleagues and advisors to join me here on the stage. So first, Jonas, please come and join me. He's a student at the Vilnius University, political science, but at the same time, at the moment, also intern at my office. Also, Mayo, where are you? Student of Helsinki University and also part of our team and intern in our office. And you also study political science among other subjects. And Paulius, my own advisor, study at one of the Vilnius University and is an advisor on youth affairs to our office and our team. So, dear participants, time to use the Slido. We have put 2 questions for you, and we will hopefully create a word cloud together. And the first question to answer would be like, how do you feel now? In what mood are you? You will be asked to add maybe 1 word, but meanwhile you do that. I will ask the same question to Jonas, Mayo, and Paulius. Jonas, how do you feel?
I feel excited actually. I think that this conference, with this conference, we have taken a step towards a more inclusive society, one that takes children into consideration. I am excited because I truly believe that we can try to implement the ideas and practices that we have heard in these couple of days.
Mayo?
Yeah, I'm feeling hopeful and inspired. I mean, I do think we have a lot of work still to do, but I'm still happy that we've been able to raise awareness to these different topics and highlight the importance of child and youth inclusion.
Paulius?
So I feel great because I know that we made a great job, all of us, towards the more inclusive society for our children and for the young people indeed. So.
And if we look at the word cloud, happy, I like that. But for sure, inspired and motivated and optimistic. That sounds like a very good start. So let's move on to the second question, and that is, what is your takeaways? So, do you want to start, Paulius? No, Jonas wants to start. I
really do. Well, actually, there have been many very good points made during the conference. Nevertheless, as migrants' issues in Lithuania, not only Lithuania, but Poland and Latvia as well, are so relevant at the moment. Either way.
Maybe
I can use the other microphone. Either way, I think that for those reasons, the topic of migrants is extremely important. So that's why I would really thank for the panel on migrants, children migrants, rights. So I think that is my main takeaways.
Yeah. Well, I would say that the conference has been a good reminder to us all how important and crucial it is to work together, and especially how important the Nordic-Baltic cooperation is.
And I just do really agree with everything my colleagues mentioned before. And I'm just happy that you were all gonna be a part of it.
Thank you. And thank you for helping me to summarize the conference and trust youth. I think that is as simply as that, or common sense. trust youth. I really like to see that as the largest one. So my second responsibility, or our second responsibility, is of course to thank you all. And we will, I don't want to be, in front of the ones that we should thank. So I give the floor to you, Paulius. Whom do we start with to thank?
We start with our dear partners and friends that came here and helped us organizing the conference, all the panel discussions, all the keynote presentations. So we do really want to thank you for all your assistance and involvement, and also for the way you always addressed the concerns what we had in relation with this conference, which actually made our work, all of our work brighter for all of us. So thank you all.
Thank you. And Jonas, will you continue?
Yeah, I would also like to thank our speakers, live and online, with such interesting insights. The speakers are the ones who made this conference so interesting and lively. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and giving us the chance to learn from you. We hope to see you again in Vilnius sometime.
Yes, you belong to our family now, right? Mayo, whom will you?
And we would also, of course, like to thank all of our moderators for who have played an important part in the conference. And we're very grateful for the time that you took and the contributions that you made. Thank you.
And I would like to continue to thank the interpreters. The Conferenta technical team, I think they were having a hard time yesterday, but it went a little bit smoother today, so thank you very much for that. But also Rasa, our colleague in the office, and of course all you, the participants. And when we were thinking about the gift, what we can give the ones online, here, and we thought, okay, of course, if we have to think about the children. So we have, on behalf of all of you that you just saw on the 3 slides, donated a certain sum. I have the digital certificate here in my inbox, a certain sum to UNICEF for the children of the world. Just a little bit more. So since 2019, we have implemented this big project in the field of social and health. And this conference is the last activity of many. We have had activities including study visits, seminars, webinars, hackathon, as you know, and much more. In the field of disability, with my colleagues in the Nordic Council of Ministers office in Estonia responsible. And more specifically, my colleague Mele, I think I wave. And for the second theme was dementia, and that was my colleague in the Nordic Council of Ministers office, Latvia, Daina, who took that responsibility. So thank you for the great work throughout almost 2.5 years, I think. And here in Vilnius office at the Nordic Council of Ministers, it's Vida, also the maestro of this conference. And we would like to ask Vida to come to the stage and thank you so much for all your work. And if you knew Vida, you would also know, or knew her as I know her, you would also know that she loves flowers. So here comes some colors. Do you want to say something or should I continue?
I am very happy and I'm very much impressed. And I thank you so much to all of you who contributed to make it a success, including also technical support and interpretation. And thank you to all who decided to come and join us. Thank you a lot.
And as I see a flash in my face, I also would like to say thank you to our photographer. Having said that, we will, in one way or another, from now I talk about from the Nordic Council of Ministers office here in Lithuania, continue this work. And I'm sure we would like to have the pleasure to continue to work with all of you that has been involved in this conference. So you will see us again, but don't forget that you can also contact us. And please continue to trust, to listen to children and youth. Thank you so much.